Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent, and today we're playing the new Banished seasonal event, which is an alternate game mode in which once we've selected our starting hand, our entire deck gets banished. That fundamentally changes many of the cards that we want to have in our deck, making the deck we're about to use both one of the strongest overall and most capable of countering other popular decks. So let's go give it a look. So today we'll be taking another look at a revised version of our previous Monsters Arachas Swarm deck because it was extremely effective in the past, and it has been a really long time since we last had this event because it got skipped once before. So we have made some updates here. In general, the idea here is that we have a bunch of tall removal and we go wide rather than tall on our side of the board because, in general, what we tend to see other people use in this event is, since rounds tend to be shorter, because you don't draw cards in between rounds with your deck being banished, people like to play some high-tempo, point-slammy cards, which, in a short round, may be effective, but does mean we have some solid counters. So, that means we have cards like Villentretenmerth to destroy the highest card on the board, which, if we're not going particularly tall with our units, means this is not going to hit us, and is still very likely to get a lot of destruction for them. And similarly, of course, Heatwave as well. Just about the same idea as Villentretenmerth, just doesn't come with a body. We also have both Curse of Corruption destroying the highest unit, and Glorious Hunt destroying the highest base power unit. Now, in this case, it is theoretically possible that these cards could hit your own unit, so of course, be careful here, make sure you time these properly so that you don't destroy your own cards, but for the most part, we're going to have a high quantity of low power cards, which means it is very unlikely that this hits us. And lastly, we have a couple of Predatory Dives as well, which may destroy our opponent's lowest unit, but if we use this after our opponent plays their first unit, then it's just going to destroy whatever they put on the board, and, you know, oftentimes in this event, that's still going to be a pretty high power card. And for us, destroying our lowest unit, either if we have nothing on the board yet, obviously means we destroy nothing, or we just use our leader ability to spawn in a 1-power drone, in which case we're losing a 1-power drone, but because this is an organic card, once we're done playing it, we'll spawn in a 1-power drone anyway. So that means collectively across all those cards, we have a ton of tall removal. So again, if our opponent is using a bunch of point slammy cards, which is generally the most popular way to play in this event, then that is a really nice way to counter those types of cards. Then technically what we like to do is in round 1, if we're on blue coin, we'll play one card, one relatively weak unit, something like, say, a Nightwraith, or maybe Endrega Eggs, and use our stratagem as well, and leave it at that, pass immediately after. Or if we're on red coin, just pass without playing anything at all. The reason for that is because, again, with no cards in our deck, that means we do not draw into any cards in between rounds. And so that means that if we were to play additional cards in round 1, it's going to mean that round 2 and round 3 are always going to get shorter, and we like a long round, because if our opponent is generally trying to play those point slam cards that require very little setup, then the best case scenario for them is to have short rounds in which they don't need setup for those cards, whereas other more engine-based decks don't have time to set up. But if we deliberately keep round 1 and round 2 short, then that means that we can maximize the amount of time we have to play in round 3, have time to set ourselves up, and eventually actually outscore those point slammy cards, and not have to worry about destroying our own cards with all of our removal with things like Villentretenmerth. So again, that means either playing one card in round 1 if you're on blue coin, so you can at least use your stratagem, or if you're on red coin, just play nothing, immediately pass. And that means basically the goal is you force your opponent to play one more card than you in round 1 in order to win round 1. Sure, they may win round 1, but because they're a card down, they are going to be very likely to drive pass in round 2, giving you a free one-turn way to win round 2, maximizing the length of round 3, which again is good because in round 3, what we then do is focus on spawning in as many units as possible. So we can do that, of course, with our leader ability to spawn in a drone, and then once we have a drone or some insectoid of some variety, we can use spontaneous evolution on it to spawn in even more insectoids. Combine that with Arachas Behemoth to boost up all those insectoids, or even before that, if you have a Kikimore Warrior, what you do is you use this to destroy a 1-power drone and replace that with a 3-point Kikimore Warrior, which of course is a net 2-point play. And you technically want to do that before you start doing boosting with things like the Behemoth, because That way, you're boosting the, the warriors, not the drones that you're going to destroy anyway. So it's worth a few more points in that case. Then, once we have gotten a bunch of units on the board there, Arachas Nest being another great way to make that happen, we can use cards like Zoltan Scoundrel in the range row to boost all the units that we have in one row. We can use cards like, additionally, Yennefer of Vengerberg in the range row to boost every unit on the board. Now, this does also boost our opponents as well, but presumably we have way more units than they do, so it should still be worth a lot more to us than it is to them. And also, Bone Talisman to boost every unit that we have on the board. And similarly, Triss Telekinesis to either use one of those special cards that helps us spawn in more cards, or Bone Talisman as a finisher to boost up all the cards that we already have. In addition to that, we have things like, Chimera as well. If you have either a bunch of drones in a row, or you've used your Kikimore Warrior and made a whole bunch of Kikimore Warriors in a row to replace all those drones, you consume whichever one you have the most copies of with Chimera, and in doing so, boost all the other ones in that row. And we do have a few additional ways to spawn in more units as well. Idarran is mostly just a way to get additional drones. Basically, you play him early, you use 1 leader ability charge per turn because he can create 1 additional copy of a card per turn. So if you play him early, 1 leader ability charge per turn means you're going to get 5 additional drones. Combine that with, even if you have run out of leader ability charges, your other organic cards, which will automatically spawn in a 1-power drone, and you're going to get even more ways to spawn in more cards. And then Crimson Curse, which spawns in a couple of Ekimaras on our side of the board, and a 1-power drone, because it's an organic card, and 5 turns of Blood Moon, which is solid bleed damage, so this is a nice card to play in a long round. Again, we want to play in a long round, so we have as much time as possible to maximize the number of units we have on the board, and then proceed to boost those cards with some of our finishers. So there's a look at the deck, and like I said, it is a really good counter-meta deck, because generally speaking, your opponent is likely to play some high base power cards, and that means you have tons of ways to shut them down with things like Villentretenmerth, Heatwave, Curse of Corruption, and Glorious Hunt, and even Predatory Dive as well. And then in a long round, if we have enough time, we can still outscore them with spawning in a ton of units and then boosting them all up with things like Yennefer, Zoltan, and Bone Talisman. So with all that being said, let's go see it in action. Alright, so going up against Nilfgaard here, and we'll go first. Alright, and against Nilfgaard in particular, I think we want to have a fair amount of tall removal, and we have some with Villentretenmerth, but not really anything outside of that. And although Bone Talisman is a great finisher, I think having 2 of those is a little bit risky, so why don't we dump one of them? Predatory Dive is another potential form of tall removal, so I do like that. I think Nightwraith may be our first play, only play potentially, in round 1, so let's leave that. But, still would like more tall removal here. So I think, given how we have Spontaneous Evolution, maybe we can sacrifice Arachas Nest. And, well, get another one in return. Alright, fair enough. Fair enough, I suppose. So as I said, I think we will use Nightwraith as our one and only play in round 1 here, because we, especially against Nilfgaard, I think, want to make this round as short as possible. Because that way, we can hopefully maintain a super long, as long as possible, round 3, which is certainly beneficial. Yeah, this is looking a lot more like the Nilfgaard meta here, because Sheilard against Nilfgaard would potentially hit a T-Bore for, 12 points of damage. It's not enough for them to catch us here on this turn. I mean, sure, it hurts a little bit that it hit Idarran, but it means that we definitely will not trigger Villentretenmerth on Idarran, so still not that bad. So we'll pass here. And what this does is it means our opponent is likely to play one more card to catch us in round 1, or, controversial decision for them right there. We win round 1 on even cards. So what we do here is we do not take the bait. We dry pass, and in doing so, force them to go a card down and make as long a round 3 as possible, because they, based on how they played Sheilard, are likely using what is the most common type of Nilfgaard deck. Usually it's with Imposter, but that means that they're going to use a bunch of point slams, which in a short round are amazing. In a long round, we can potentially still outscore them. So, and having tall removal like Villentretenmerth and Predatory Dive will be great for that. So they might have done that. My guess is they did, because this is probably going to be Ciri Nova is my guess. No Mage Torturer. Okay. Not that valuable, but hey, it means they're still going a card down. All right, and so there's the 13-point T-board. Big mistake playing that first, because it is an extremely obvious Predatory Dive target for us right here, because this removes a 13-point T-board, doesn't remove anything for us, even puts down a 1-point drone for us as well. So that is an amazing trade right there. All right, then Master Puppets, I mean, we are not really going to have much in the way of powerful bronze units here, or at least, if we do, it's going to take a long time before we get there. So for the moment, we, technically speaking, would like to go Idarran here, and then try to maximize the amount of drones we can spawn in with him. He is obviously going to be very destroyable for them, so it's a little risky, but I think we still go for it. Let's put him in the melee row, because I think we want to make sure we have room in the range row for Yennefer in particular. She is definitely going to be a card that we are going to prefer the boosting approach with. So at the very least, we managed to get slightly more drone value out of Idarran. That is what he's here for. Basically, every time we play an organic card or use our leader ability, we get an extra drone. Wow. Wow. Okay, I mean, we'll take the Heatwave bait on him. I mean, yeah, he was going to help us get a few more drones, but it's not a huge deal. So now I think we're probably looking at Arachas Nest melee row to set up Arachas Behemoth on our next turn to boost up all those guys. It's probably the plan. Would perhaps normally opt for a spontaneous evolution here, but since they have Master Puppets, I'm deliberately trying to wait a bit before we do that. And see if maybe, well, I mean, on one hand, if we bait them into doing it early, then might be able to steal something back. We'll see. We'll see. I think we still go this route first. As I said, trying to prioritize spawning in things melee row so that we still have room for Yennefer in the range row later on. Uma's Curse. Okay, and which crone is this? This is the boosting crone, which is not great on Master Puppets. The whole point of Master Puppets is for this to be weak and exchange it for a much stronger card. But the other thing that is worth considering, Double Cross, if they get Yennefer and they go melee row, that's going to be a huge, huge loss for us. So we might need to rush Yennefer a little bit here, just to avoid them using it against us. So, although usually the longer we wait, the more effective it can be, that might not be the case this time around. So I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 means there's the perfect amount of space for Arachas Behemoth here. I think we will go that on this turn, but next turn is probably going to be Yennefer. It's probably going to be Yennefer, otherwise we are running too much of a risk of them. I mean, they might still go with us slightly early. Double Cross here, but we really hope they wait one more turn. Okay, I mean, if going for the tall removal, that's the thing. The meta decks in this event are all based around point slams and, to a certain extent, tall removal, but we just don't have tall cards here. That's the whole point of this deck, is to go wide and still remove their tall cards. So that is why you're really not that concerned about that poison, not to mention that once we use Chimera, this all these drones will actually be worth 3 points, just like this Arachas Behemoth, so it's worth the same value anyway. So I think we do still go Yennefer here, because otherwise we are risking too much. So let's do it. It is, as I said, better if we can wait longer under normal circumstances, but this is not normal circumstance, and also, technically, we should have used Arachas Swarm first, although we actually, I think, that being said, probably going to run out of space here. I guess we could have still done it and just done a spontaneous evolution elsewhere. I mean, be pretty silly, but we could spontaneous evolution on this cow carcass, and since it is a beast, it would get a big boost. It is going to get destroyed, though, so we shouldn't do that. We do want to make sure we have time for Villentretenmerth, so we should probably play him here. Chimera is going to be our biggest card, our biggest single card, along with Villentretenmerth. So, I mean, this might get locked or answered in some way, shape, or form, and they should do that. It's not going to be amazing. It'll remove one of these 8s. Right now, we obviously got rid of Tibor already. That would have been usually the biggest threat. So, I mean, we could Chimera on this turn. I guess we will. So we hit one of the drones, and that boosts all the other drones. And that's why I was saying, didn't really care about the poison on this guy, because these drones are going to be just as big anyway. So now this is a 9, and this could be a solid target for them to try to remove. They will use leader ability here, but Bone Talisman's not worth much for them. Spontaneous Evolution is not great either. Right. We do technically have the strongest unit right now. Okay, yeah, you know, fair point. Fair point. For that reason, we should have gone Villentretenmerth before Chimera. But for what it's worth... Okay, you'll destroy that, sure. For what it's worth... You will now destroy Chimera. We will now destroy either Master Puppets or Weavis. So, you know, in the end, I think it's still going to work out for us. Let's leave space melee, or rather, leave space range row. So we can either Spontaneous Evolution. Yeah, it's going to be Spontaneous Evolution on one of you guys to spawn in more drones, and then that sets up a final turn Bone Talisman. Could technically... Oh no, Dragon, not Beast. So Villentretenmerth does not benefit much from Spontaneous Evolution. So yeah, we still do this. So yeah, this is going to destroy Chimera on this turn. And again, we technically should have waited on that. You could steal it. You could steal... This is... You don't want to do that. It's also their last turn. So, this will now... Yeah, they realize there is no way they can catch us at this point. So there you have it. That is the meta deck. But still, we'll take the win. Alright, so going up against monsters here. And they'll go first. Alright, so we have some solid tall removal here with things like Curse of Corruption, 2 Predatory Dives, and... Yeah, but double Kikimore Warrior is probably overkill unless we want to use one as a throwaway card in one of the rounds, assuming we do go for a very short round 1. Heatwave gives us even more tall removal here. Probably swap out Nightwraith at this point. A Arachas Nest. So I'm assuming since they're going with Force of Nature, they're either going to have some really tall units here, or they're going Thrive. And I'm leaning toward the former at this point. So I think that should work well with all the tall removal that we have here. And I think we will proceed with what is our usual plan of basically playing nothing in round 1, and in doing so, forcing them to, well, or at least highly encouraging them to drive pass in round 2, because they aren't going to draw into anything else. So we will just have card advantage in round 2 if they try to play. And then the hope there is they drive past round 2, that gives us a maximum length round 3, which is definitely going to benefit us more than we hope it would benefit them. And they do drive past. Okay, so all going according to plan thus far. We do, of course, need to make sure that we have at least one throwaway, and we did kind of mulligan our best throwaways here. So, by that I mean we've mulliganed our worst cards. So, it's a little bit tougher to choose which one to use here. It could be Kikimore Warrior. It is actually quite solid, given especially how much drone spawning we are capable of pulling off here. So, could potentially even justify a Predatory Dive, since we have another one. It will put a drone on the board for us because it is an organic card. So I wouldn't rule that out. We also have a lot of unit spawning, so maybe you could justify Arachas Nest, but I think, although it pains me a little bit because Predatory Dive can be amazing, and also now they know that we're running it, I think it's still probably the best option here, because we still have one in hand. Okay, so I think what we want to do here is probably Arachas Nest first, melee row, then next turn Kikimore Warrior, or really Kikimore Warrior first, although we'd like this card to stay alive, so if they do have anything to try to answer it, that'd be kind of unfortunate. Let's do this, and then we'll put one drone on the board. That way, if they're about to Predatory Dive us, we're losing this rather than this, and this, despite just being a 3-power card, it can, every turn, convert a 1-power drone into a 3-point Kikimore Warrior, so that's actually worth a lot long-term. Okay, Karenthir into what? Kashe? No, Beast. Alright, so for what it's worth, that is the lowest unit on their side right now. We'd be trading a beast that is going to get stronger for a 1-power drone. And I think that is probably worth doing. Highest unit right now is Caranthir, so I think we'd still wait on this. Obviously, they still have the original beast in hand. But I think this is a solid exchange here. And then we'll just throw another one of our leader ability drones in this row so we can do this. Okay, Apiarian Phantom. Also going to grow every turn. They very well could justify going after the Kikimore Warrior here, but they don't opt to do that. So yes, it will gain power over time. Not quite as quickly as the Beast would, so it's not as much of a concern. We would like to get Crimson Curse going relatively soon, because obviously we want to make sure we have 5 turns to benefit from it. On the other hand, as soon as we play this, our opponent is likely to play all their units in the other row, and one of the units in this melee row has Veil, which is a great counter for Crimson Curse. So I think we wait at least 1 turn before doing that. So let's go and maybe even a Arachas Nest melee row. And that means there's definitely plenty of stuff for us to use here for Kikimore Warrior fodder. And we want to try to get as many of these Kikimore Warrior conversions done as possible before we play Arachas Behemoth, which will eventually go in this melee row, because this will boost all the other insectoids in the row, but if we boost the drones and then try to convert them into Kikimore Warriors, then we're missing out on the boost, because we're replacing what is then a 2-power unit with a 3-power unit that doesn't benefit from the Behemoth. So there is that beast. We do also have Heatwave, for what it's worth. Highest unit right now is either of you. We'd kind of like to get... On one hand, you're going to grow faster. On the other hand, you have Veil. So you're better against Crimson Curse. As in, we don't like you as much against Crimson Curse. We are more likely to want to Heatwave you long term. So we'd love if we had a little more predictability out of this. But let's at the very least do this. And we'll Heatwave you. Yes, they very well may have a bigger card than that, but if they do, we still have Curse of Corruption. I'd kind of like that to get the Phantom, but next turn is going to be Crimson Curse. Okay, it's Cursed Damsel. Where are you putting it? Range row? Okay, you are making it kind of tough to choose which row to put this in. Where is the Woodland Spirit going? That is now going to be the target of Curse of Corruption, which I think is probably fine. Let's go. I mean, yes, on one hand, Crimson Curse over here, putting bleed on a unit that we're about to destroy from Curse of Corruption is a little unfortunate. On the other hand, as we just said, the bleed is not great on Apiarian Phantom because it has Veil. So maybe we do this and just wait for Curse of Corruption until very late on, and we can eventually get the Apiarian Phantom with it, which will actually be higher than a 9 toward the end of the round. So sure, let's do this. Okay, and oh, they're going after something. They should be that. Yeah, I mean, we got a lot of value out of that Kikimore Warrior, so I think we'll settle for that. And we still needed space to fit in Arachas Behemoth. Renfree, oh dear. Oh dear. Alright, what's it gonna be? Damage all units is probably the most dangerous to us, because we are quite wide right now with a lot of units on the board. Yeah, destroying an enemy unit with 8 or less power is not going to be that useful when pretty much all of our cards are going to max out at 3 or 4 power. 6 in the case of this Chimera is likely to be the highest come the end, or technically Bone Talisman, get it up to a 7. But, okay. So, now we probably do go Behemoth here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Perfect number of units, because that's going to fill the row once we play you. And boost everyone else up in the process. And if we had more room, we could have, of course, used Arachas Swarm there to make sure we maximize value out of you, but we were fine. We already had that going. The slightly tricky thing is that on our next turn, we may want to go Chimera, and, you know, given how we got most, but not all the drones converted into Kikimore Warriors. It does make it a little questionable how to... Oh, well, that's kind of unfortunate. Well, I mean, you're an 11, so yes, you can now become the Curse of Corruption target, but hitting the Apiarian Phantom that was otherwise going to be our target is not something that we are terribly fond of seeing. So, I mean, we could even justify going with this now. Of course, there's always a chance they're waiting to play their biggest cards at the end. That wouldn't be terribly surprising. But Chimera was what I was going to do here, and there are 4 warriors and 4 drones. That's what I was getting at, is that by getting some but not all of the drones converted into Kikimore Warriors, it did limit the value of Chimera to a certain extent, because now it means we are getting a few less boosts here. But I opted for the drone because since we know they have Renfree, and they're looking to destroy a unit with 8 or less power. I mean, technically speaking, that could have gone higher than 8, I suppose, if we consumed a bigger one. Though, yeah, no, we would have gotten exactly at 8 if we'd done a Kikimore Warrior. Yes, after Bone Talisman, we would have been out of removal range, but I think we still would have invited the Renfree leader ability there. It seemed like a kind of odd choice, but okay. So now it's either Curse of Corruption or Bone Talisman. If we do Bone Talisman, we want to use leader ability first. I think we might just want to get rid of this Hugo here, because otherwise he's going to potentially become the recipient of the bleed, and that's not super valuable if we're going to remove him anyway. Yes, there's a chance that their last card is an even bigger point slam, but I think, you know, chances of it being much bigger than an 11 is pretty low. So let's just go for it here. And now that guarantees that the bleed is going on the Woodland Spirit, which is going to stick. Scratch-a-lot. It is late for Scratch-a-lot. Okay, so now we spawn in our remaining drones. Which means we have almost an entirely full board for, I think this is going to be a 16-point Bone Talisman. And it does mean they still have their leader ability, which is going to be worth a lot. They do have an 8-power unit to use on it. Unfortunately for us, but we have a big lead here. So how exactly will this add up? There it is, but it is not enough here. They still have Apiarian Phantom, but even with that, we'll hold on for the win. Alright, so going up against Scoia'tael here, and we'll go first. Okay, so I'm thinking since they're hand buff here, we probably want to have some solid tall removal, because at least by the end of round 3, they will probably have some pretty big cards. So things like Glorious Hunt, Predatory Dive, and Heatwave, those are all, I think, welcome sights. And then I think we dump perhaps you two. Crimson Curse, not bad. Curse of Corruption, even more tall removal. I mean, we'll take it. My question now becomes, if we are playing turn 1, what is our opener here? Because we don't exactly have a great one. Let's swap you out. Oh, okay, well, Yen is a good finisher, yes, but usually, at least on red coin, we would just play 0 cards in round 1 and force our opponent to go a card down, and therefore, hopefully dry past round 2, maximize the length of round 3, and then we have a long round to work with, which generally works in our favor. That being said, when we're on blue coin, you know, we probably want to benefit from the magic lamp here. But we have a bunch of cards that require some setup in a longer round, and so, you know, what are we looking to play here? I mean, we could throw down Idarran and just give the impression that we're playing longer, but I think we'd probably like to still save him. So, I mean, what is it, then? Is it an empty Predatory Dive? Is it an empty Chimera? Triss with no additional setup? I kind of hate it either way. That's what I was looking for with our final mulligans there. Tell you what. Obviously, they're going to play nothing in this melee row. True. On the other hand, it does still give us a fair number of points here with 2 Ekimaras, a drone, and obviously we flipped the Lampkin, and this is going to be the only card we play in round 1 in all likelihood. Because Dwarf Berserker cannot match that. tempo-wise at least. So now we just pass, and it means we are still forcing them to go a card down if they want to win round 1, which I imagine they will take that bait. Now, here comes the hand buff. I'm actually surprised they didn't use it on their previous turn. Alright, and Rune Mage, well, that does kind of sort of give them a little bit of carryover value. At least with the utility of being able to get more options when they create stuff. Chameleon, I mean, it's not like that's going to have much in the way of carryover value. Either way, it is enough for them to win round 1, but we expected them to do that. Now the question is, because they played one more card than us in round 1, do they dry pass here? Or do they risk playing in round 2 and we have one more card than them? They will risk playing. And not only does this have a decent amount of hand boosting that it has received, it's also worth some long-term value, so I think this is not a bad Predatory Dive target. So let's go for it. Because it gets rid of you and gives us a unit on the board. So tempo-wise, it does still work for us. There is another one. Well, we can remove that too, although do want to be mindful of we'd like to still have options to remove their big recipients of the hand boosting with things like Heatwave, Glorious Hunt, and Curse of Corruption. So I am a little bit hesitant to break those out here. We could even try to see if we get the, well, another Predatory Dive from Triss Telekinesis, and that means we just would sacrifice this drone and they'd still lose their Hawker Smuggler. Not sure how many other special cards they have in their starting deck, and so we may not see that. But I think we'll still give it a shot here. That's the dream. We do not get it. And with fewer cards on the board right now, that means Bone Talisman would usually be our go-to, but I think instead we'll go Spontaneous Evolution on this drone. It's probably our best choice. Which does match them and surpass them a fair bit, tempo-wise. But given how they have committed this, they are, yes, going to push pretty aggressively here in this round, I think. So they go for damage enemy unit by 6, deal excess damage to adjacent enemy units. That's not great for us because we do have some low power units. So they will get a significant amount of excess damage, and also, in doing so, potentially wipe out 3 of our units with just 1 round of that ability, and that would be pretty painful since we are, of course, also trying to go wide. And they go for a long-term option on the passive side of things, boosting up their cards. Alright, I mean, all that suggests they are trying to play further here in this round. For what it's worth, we are still in the lead here, tempo-wise. But, as I said, I think we want to try to save these 3 for round 3 if we can. So I think that means we're probably looking at Idarran here. And with him, we then proceed to spawn in another unit in that row. That'll spawn in a free 1 power drone in this row, helping us to get wider more quickly. Which means if we do end up going with Yen in this round, which is starting to look like that might happen, then that is more effective, or we do now have Chimera Adrenaline 5 activated here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units in this row. Technically, I mean, we could use 2 leader ability charges on this turn and eat a drone and boost up all the drones. 1 drone per turn is the most effective way to maximize value out of Idarran, though, so I'm kind of hoping we could do that. But, yeah. We'd also like to have room for Yennefer in the range row as well, though. So yeah, when you can, you generally want to try to flood the melee row if possible. So, might even Yennefer here. I think we will. We'll do this. And then we'll Yennefer, because we do have way more units than our opponent does right now. So, that is really strong tempo-wise. Sorceress, Everything is 8. Oh, how I wish we had Scorch right now. Oh, how I wish we had Scorch right now. I just said bye-bye to every single unit that they have. Unfortunately, that's obviously not the case here. But we could either go Bone Talisman for additional tempo, or Chimera. I mean, both of these cards at this point are cards we'd like to play in this round. Otherwise, we run the risk of just not having enough units on the board to benefit much from them. I think we'll go Bone Talisman because, I mean, Chimera, in a short round 3, at least it's a 5-point body, right? And we could theoretically create more of the drones with our leader ability if necessary. So let's go with this first. And I don't think we'll do anything with Idarran this time around, because we have a big enough lead that I'm not too concerned about this round. I'm more concerned about the bleed attempt. I mean, unless they break out. I mean, obviously they're going to use Sorceress here, and they're potentially going to use this. But I am curious to see how hard they're going to push now in this round that we have established a pretty solid lead. They're going to try to use leader ability here. Yeah. Smart move, and in that way, was a good idea for us to get the Yen and also the Bone Talisman as quickly as we could. My goodness. Everything is an 8. It's going to continue to taunt us with our lack of Scorch. But, okay. So, I mean, Chimera is now less effective. There aren't as many drones in this row. We could, of course, continue to build up more of them if we were to use it here. The problem is if we do that, yes, we have lots of removal. In fact, we have enough removal that we could just... Yeah, we should actually use some removal here. Because this is enough to destroy every single unit that they could play, unless they can play multiple units with one of these cards, in round 3. We just need to make sure we can put some points up on the board still in round 3, because these don't give us anything. So, let us... Let's see, highest base power here. Actually, not... that should be you, right? At 7. Yeah, so why don't we go with that? Because at this point, we can still destroy both of their units with Heatwave and Curse of Corruption. Although, actually, right now, Curse of Corruption would hit Idarran for what it's worth. Not anymore, though. Alright, they're seemingly going all in on this round, which is kind of crazy. So at this point, you would think they would realize that this is not a very good idea for them. So, you are now the highest unit. Let's destroy you. Yes, they still have one more big card in their hand, but we can Heatwave it in round 3 and then play Chimera. If they played in this round, we still Heatwave it, and then we have Chimera and Chimera alone in round 3, which is enough to win when they have no other units to play. So, we do this, get rid of you, and they tried to bleed us big time, but I think at this point we can safely say that it has backfired on them, because if they play this card, then they have nothing left in round 3, so they won't play it, but we know that they have messed up big time, because we're just going to Heatwave whatever this is. And really the only chance they have is if this can spawn in multiple units. Alright, we do need to go first, which means we'll go Arachas Swarms, use all those remaining charges, and then consume them with Chimera, which is not worth that much in the way of points, but because we can get some units in this row, and then if we play Chimera here, we can get a unit in this row. Really, all we need is for them to not destroy every single card, which is, I'm pretty sure, just flat out impossible. And a Glace is going to be big, yes, but, I mean, so they were relying on that big point slam. As we were saying, though, I'm sorry. It's not going to work. Alright, so going up against Nilfgaard here. And we'll go first. Okay, so assuming they are the Nilfgaard meta with point slams and towel removal, we want to be mindful of that. Having cards like Heatwave, Glorious Hunt, and Predatory Dive to remove their tall cards is nice. Round 1, we'd probably like to keep short still, and means we'd like to have some relatively low-value unit to place, which could mean either of these guys. So what if we make it you, dump you? Bone Talisman is a good finisher, especially when we have decent ways to spawn in units and boost those units as well. Yeah, I think this works. Yes, we can do better than this, but I'm looking for a card that we use in round 1 as a bit of a throwaway, because I think all we want to do here is go Endrega Eggs plus Stratagem and leave it at that. So that's a 9-point slam, which is not out of this world. You know, they could catch us if they really commit something big right off the bat, but we'd like to keep round 1 as short as possible, and Vengerberg is certainly not going to be enough tempo-wise. So I think that means we pass here, unless they go leader ability as well. No. Okay, so we pass here. That means it's certainly within reach for them, and we kind of want them to take that bait to go a card down to win round 1, because if they do, then that means they're not going to draw into anything, in the next round, Imperial Practitioner in this event, is very bold, seeing as how you do not have anything to draw into at the top of your deck. Not to mention you needed to play something else to pass us anyway. So now you're 2 cards down. So, yeah, they're not going to draw into anything going into round 2. So, presumably that means they'll either dry pass or go cards down for the rest of the match. And so that's what we were trying to bait them into doing, and honestly, they went for it even more than I expected them to go for it. So Glynis obviously is a powerful Assimilate engine, and for that reason, we will probably immediately destroy her with something like Predatory Dive, and in doing so, also put a 1-power unit on the board for us, which means, tempo-wise, we are doing fine, and we've shut down what would have been one of their most dangerous cards. Here comes the leader ability. It's Idarran, which I'm not really sure they'll get much opportunity to benefit from, but we shall see. I mean, if they seal our leader ability, then they could. Alright then, I mean, we could Glorious Hunt and proceed to destroy Idarran. It's tempo-wise not enough at that point, but tempo-wise, we're not that concerned right now, because even after playing this, we are still 2 cards up. We could proceed to use some leader ability charges, and that could be enough for us to pass them. We have enough unit spawning with Spontaneous Evolution and Arachas Nest that committing some of that here in round 2 is probably still fine. I mean, we wanted round 2 to go quickly to have a maximum length round 3, but it's looking like that's not going to be the case here. So why don't we just do this, get rid of Idarran, and then that means we need to use, well, alas, basically every leader ability charge, which I don't love. So on second thought, I think I will pass here, or end our turn here. And if they pass now and say, haha, I have more points than you, you need to play another card, we say, fine. That works for us. I mean, we still are going to have card advantage in that case. So now the question, though, is do we start to commit? We should probably commit some of our unit spawning here, right? So either Spontaneous Evolution or Arachas Nest. I think we probably go Spontaneous Evolution. The tempo here, I think, is a little bit better. Alternatively, if we think this round is going to go even longer still, then Kikimore Warrior, we want to make sure it has some time to convert 1-power drones into 3-power Kikimore Warriors. Because if we wait too long for that, then that is not going to be that effective, and I don't want to get trapped with this as one of our last cards. So I think, once again, because we have so much card advantage right now, we're willing to do some things that are tempo-wise not amazing, just to avoid getting stuck with low-tempo cards at the end. Okay, I mean, it's going to say congratulations, you're going to get a 1-power coup on the drone, but that Kikimore Warrior is actually not a bad recipient of that when they have our leader ability here. So, I mean, the other thing is Idarran, we would like to have him on the board when we spawn in other stuff here. So at this point, we might need to commit him. And let's spawn in 1 unit this turn, because Idarran can only spawn in an additional unit once per turn. So we basically just get a free drone every turn out of Idarran. Okay, doo-doo into another Idarran. That was actually a very powerful move, for what it's worth. Actually a very powerful move. Thing is, we should have Bone Talisman and potentially a second Bone Talisman from Triss if it comes to that. Whereas they probably do not have that same type of finishing capability, but 2 Kikimore Warriors is pretty strong. Granted, well, they use Arachas Swarm. They can get some good targets for it. So, do we shut something down here with Heatwave? Technically, Idarran is not bad shut down either. I get the feeling they're going all in here, which unfortunately I think means we do need to Heatwave Idarran. Because if we let him stay... Oh, we also should have gone melee were there probably. But if we let him stay, they could have used Kikimore Warrior to destroy this drone at the start of their turn. And they would have gotten another Kikimore Warrior, which means they would have had a 3 they could have used every turn, which when combined with leader ability was just way too much tempo. Way too much to let them have. Now, Terra Nova is not terribly impressive, given how they gave spying. I don't even remember that they gave spying to a drone. But Yeah. Okay. So that's where we can start to catch them, is when they're stuck with cards that just don't have setup. They also have only one card left in their hand. So this is where we have the luxury of time on our side. Because that is already almost enough, and now if you throw in a Bone Talisman on our next turn, or Triss, then we can catch them. And we probably should do Bone Talisman, to be honest, because Bone Talisman in a short round is not great. Definitely not great. So the question is, are they truly all in this round? And they are, apparently. So means we need just 1 point in round 3, and 1 card in round 3 would be sufficient. But what is this finisher that they're using from their hand? They can still get more from this warrior. It's Olgierd. I mean, it's a solid point slam. So we just need 1 point in round 3. So I think that means we go and probably try to save Arachas Nest as that final play. Because if it's Bone Talisman, then that's 0 points by itself in round 3. Triss obviously could work as well, but I think she's very effective here. She's worth more than Arachas Nest by itself is, unless we go Arachas Nest plus Bone Talisman, in which case, you know, it's close. But I think we spawn in everything. Or at least do this. Yeah, I think we do this. And then, is Bone Talisman going to be enough? I don't think it will be, but we go Triss. And we get Bone Talisman. Which is enough. Which means we have 2 cards to spare. So they went all in round 2. And that means, well, we can punish them, of course, in round 3, as they have no ability to answer at all. So they'll forfeit. Alright, so going up against Arachas Swarm here, this could be a mirror match. Okay, so the tricky thing here is that our tall removal with things like Villentretenmerth, things like Heatwave, are generally not going to be as effective if our opponent is going wide rather than tall, which is very likely the case. So, I mean, there's still a chance we can get decent value out of this, but probably not nearly as good. Villentretenmerth, I mean, it is a 6-point body, but otherwise, I mean, it is probably going to be the tallest unit on the board. It's tough. It's going to be tough, I think. Let's get rid of you. And Villentretenmerth or not to Villentretenmerth? Let's not. Granted, it's extremely similar. It's just without a unit. Alright, I think what we'll do to lead things off is we will probably still opt to keep this round short and just rely upon our stratagem here to give us a little bit of an advantage and force our opponent to play 1 more card than we do, or give us the round 1 win. So let's go and maybe use Arachas Nest here. Yes, we'd like to have the ability to spawn in a bunch of drones, but on the other hand, in a long round, especially with Arachas Behemoth, which helps us get some more of them out, should still have the ability to go wide here. Okay, and they do pass here immediately, which is kind of expected. But that means we'll win round 1 here. And so now we have to choose if we want to try to push it all. We're obviously a card down. Or if we just pass here and put ourselves on an even 9 cards apiece going into round 3 and give us last say. We do like a long round. On the other hand, could we get clever without something like Crimson Curse? And yes, obviously they're not going to want to play anything in the row that has the Blood Moon on it. On the other hand, if they are going to rely at least somewhat on Arachas Swarm to give them some power here, some units, they might randomly spawn in a drone in the row that does have that. And that could be a little bit tricky. And tempo-wise, this is still fairly strong and kind of hard for them to match without playing a tall unit of their own. So if we're trying to bleed them out in round 2 at all, I think this is still the best option, and I'm kind of intrigued. Unconventional, I would not recommend trying that at home, but it is theoretically something that is a little bit tough for them to match. So if they want to play something that matches it in 1 turn, they need to play something that's an 8. And that's pretty tall, and if they are doing a similar deck, then they probably cannot go that tall. So we're at least forcing them to match us here. Granted, if we had to throw away, that'd be kind of nice to use. Kikimore Warrior could be, sort of, but we'd like to save that for a future round to combine with all of our Arachas swarms to create powerful, or more powerful, insectoids. I think we might just pass here. In which case, was it worth using the Crimson Curse? Yeah, no, probably not, as I said, but okay. Nightwraith is, of course, enough for them, and that's all they needed in round 2. Alright, they go Arachas Nest, so here's the thing. We, unfortunately... Oh, we should have gotten rid of Predatory Dive. I forgot about that. Yeah, because they're obviously going to spawn in 1-power units, which are not very useful for Predatory Dive here. Yeah, this is substantially less valuable against either Arachas Swarm or Nature's Gift, but I think we had some other things that I got rid of instead, and probably should have dumped this rather than those. But we'd like to start getting some drones out here as quickly as possible to have the Kikimore Warrior convert into a stronger insectoid. Then we use Arachas Behemoth to convert them all, or we'll rather boost them all. A Spontaneous Evolution. These are the kinds of cards that we would like to have had here, because we do not have much in the way of wide... Oh, technically speaking, melee row Yennefer is actually very tempting. And, in fact, is probably what we are about to do here, because they have substantially more cards than we do right now. Let's just do this first. Then we do this, and destroy everything but this 5-power drone on their side, and we'll weaken our cards, yes, but we substantially limit their ability to go wide, which I think is worth doing. Granted, if we knew they had another Arachas Nest, it would have been even better to have waited one more turn. But, that's unfortunate. Okay. So now we can continue to do this. And this is where we're caught in a bit of a pinch here. Might be forced into a Predatory Dive. Heatwave is obviously worth very little here. As we said, that was not going to be a great option. Don't know if Curse of Corruption hits us or hits them. Bone Talisman is very weak right now, and Chimera we'd like to wait on as well. As we said, Predatory Dive in any circumstance against Arachas Nest is going to be bad. So we will just opt to use it here. Okay, they do now have the tallest unit, for what it's worth. So Curse of Corruption does now work. And I think we will probably go as far as to use it here. And then we can save Heatwave if they have anything bigger. So let's continue to... Well, technically, we don't need to spawn anything in just yet. And in the interest of dodging any removal that they might have, with a melee row Yen, for example, we'll hold back on the Arachas Swarms for now. They obviously also have their leader ability, so yeah, we really should have saved that Yen. That could have been very valuable to us. Just wanted to do it before they boosted up their cards like this. I mean, if they do this once, then technically that was still going to be in removal range. But I also wanted to do it before we started spawning in a bunch of units. So, I mean, now we could, technically, we could even convert you, but we'd prefer to do this to maximize the total Kikimore Warrior count. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Still earlier than we would like to use you, but then again, everything else is also a little suboptimal at this point. I mean, we could go Arachas Swarm, spawn in a couple more units, and then go Behemoth. That's not ideal, because then we're converting, or we're boosting cards that we would like to convert with Kikimore Warrior anyway. It's kind of a missed opportunity there. I think we might have to, though. I believe this was the right insectoid count. Yeah, it was. Okay. So yes, this still is on net worth 1 point for the Kikimore Warrior, but as I was saying, you like to have all of your drones down there first, and then you use Behemoth. Not to mention, it's going to make it a little bit harder for us to maximize value from Chimera, and we also can't do this when our row is full. Yeah. Right, so let's Heatwave you. So we at least have an option. Fair. Okay, here come the rest of their drones. They're probably looking at something like a Bone Talisman or a Yen of their own or Glusty. Fortunately, we have boosted our 1 power units, so that is not going to destroy any of our cards, but that obviously is taller still, and therefore would have been our preferred target of our tall removal. I think what we'll do here is we'll go Chimera, and we'll use it to destroy this Kikimore Warrior. We have more Kikimore Warriors than drones, so it's slightly more valuable. It will also clear out a spot so we can use this order ability on one of our drones and get slightly more value out of it. So then we do this, or technically speaking, that is slightly better. Again, it means we aren't going to be able to do this last round, but, you know, it's basically just we miss out on 1 point in this turn, or on this turn here, in this case, whereas we would have missed out on a point. Well, I mean, now we can do it. And they realize that we are still in the lead here, so they cannot catch us. We still had Bone Talisman. We will definitely take the win. So there's a look at a Monsters Arachas Swarm deck for the new Banished seasonal event. If you liked the video, then make sure to hit the like and subscribe button and leave a comment down below to let me know which other cards, archetypes, and factions you'd like us to experiment with next. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.